Reading in a library is great, but outdoor reading can be a lot of fun, especially when you are surrounded by nature. I'm here at Freedom Park. Years ago, it used to be a prison yard during the colonial era. Behind me here, you can see the statues of the three legends, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, Ahmadu Bello, and Nnamdi Azikiwe. Chief Awolowo was in fact a prisoner here. Abat Macaulay was a prisoner here too, and a host of many Nigerian heroes. So if you are thinking of a place where you can do some outdoor reading, this is a good place to visit. By the way, you caught me reading Sefi Attah's A Bit of Difference. Sefi is one of the most internationally acclaimed writers. She's one of Nigeria's very best. In this episode, you are going to be watching an interview I had with her where Sefi spoke about a few things personal, some of her past works, and particularly her latest book, A Bit of Difference. Also in this episode, we'll be watching Bishop Matthew Kukah. Bishop Kukah is one of the most respected social commentators in Nigeria. He's a Catholic bishop. Years ago, during the Olusegun Obasanjo era, Bishop Kukah was drafted into the Oputa panel, or you might want to call it the Oputa Commission. And it's Nigeria's most famous Truth and Reconciliatory Commission. Years after, Bishop Matthew Kukah has written a book titled Witness to Justice, which chronicles the events of that commission in the early 2000s. It's a fascinating book. In this episode, Bishop Kukah talks about that book, about his experiences during the Oputa panel, and a little bit about his personal life as a writer. These and more after this break.
As a child, I don't remember being a great reader, but my aunt told me once that I was a reader. I can't remember. You know, I thought I was more a playful child. And she said, whenever people tease me about reading, I would say, to each his own. For a start, I can't imagine a child saying that, to each his own. So I must have been reading something to pick up such a grown-up expression. I remember playing a lot and having imagination, and for me that's where writing began. When I was a student at Queen's College, I was very much involved in drama. I thought I was a playwright, and every weekend we put on a play for entertainment. I couldn't wait for our turn, you know, and I would write the plays. Obviously I would be starring in it. I usually was a lead character, and I would have my friends involved. Itu Mbasi, the designer, was one of the girls involved, and we'd make the costumes, we'd think of the storylines, you know, and I'd be so scared that people wouldn't show up for the play. So I went through all the anxieties that a playwright goes through. I enjoyed it so much that I didn't take my school seriously in my third year, got into trouble for that at home, and in my fourth year I became more serious about studying. But I loved drama. I loved plays when I was a kid.
You've written all sorts, radio plays, stage plays, screenplays, short stories, novels, and all sorts. How did it all start for you, writing?
Well, the short answer to it that I normally give is that I started writing in 1995. I think I was 31, and I was working as an accountant in New York. The real answer is a little bit more untidy, so I'd rather not get into it, but You know, I just had a baby. I'd moved to America. I took a writing course during the weekend, and I've been writing ever since.
So how do you find writing? Difficult, easy, fun?
No, it's never easy. Having said that, it can get easier sometimes, but I wouldn't say it's an easy job to do. I worked as an accountant, and apart from being boring, it could be difficult work, but I've never done any work as difficult as writing.
You have a new book out now, A Bit of a Difference. How is it different from your other books?
You know, my debut novel, Everything Good Will Come, my first novel, was set in the milieu of the Nigerian middle class. And readers pretty much identified me with that story. They couldn't even tell the difference between me and the main character. So I left that for a while to write about Nigerians who didn't have that experience. I would say it's similar to Everything Good Will Come in the sense that I'm back to the same milieu, the same territory, but it's more up to date this time. It's set in the early 2000s, so it's very current, you know, and yeah, that's about it. It's different in the sense that it's current. You know, I have a hip-hop star, I have NGOs, I have Pentecostal churches, I have political parties, things that are current and to Nigeria. Whereas in Everything Good Come, I was dealing with military dictatorships, or military regimes, should I say, and everything else that was specific to the 90s. It began in the 70s, I believe, that book, and specific to that time. And now we have what's current. I have Nollywood as well. It's very up to date.
The lead character in A Bit of a Difference is Diola. Is Diola's story your story?
Again, this is a complex question in that my easy answer to it would be no, and that's what I say normally, no. She's not me. I don't even visualize her as me. But where you have something in common with your main character is not easy to explain. So it's so much easier to say, oh, no, it's not autobiographical. But there are points in which your stories meet. And because it's too difficult to explain, I'm going to give up. Probably need a psychologist to figure that out, I think. Yeah.
Do you think Nigerians read enough, particularly when you compare the reading culture here with that of what you've experienced in the United States?
Well, I live in Mississippi, which isn't very high up for education in the US, you know, and I raised my daughter there. She told me that in a whole year of school in literature, rather than read Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, they watched the film with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I was horrified. I immediately withdrew her from the school and from the state. So it depends where you are, you know. I do think that Nigerians read a lot. They don't necessarily read literature books. They read what they have to read, Bibles, Qurans, newspapers. Nigerians are always reading newspapers. Books for studying, for exams. You know, we read what we have to read, what we need to read, and hopefully what we enjoy reading. Literature books may not be high on that list, but I have readers in Nigeria, and as I said, most of my readers are Nigerians.
Your book has been translated into many foreign languages and read by many people in different parts of the world. How do readers out there view Nigerian books and Nigerian writers?
They actually appreciate us very much overseas, you know, and oddly enough, it's my translations that do better than my English editions. You know, in America and in the UK, I'm not that well known. I'm still very much a marginal writer. But I go to some country overseas in the foreign, and I'm a star. I'm telling you, I'm huge. So, no, but, and they appreciate Nigerian writers. They're very excited about the work that's coming out of Nigeria. Very respectful to Nigerian writers. And we're not always respected here, I have to tell you. I come for readings here and people are yelling at me, why did you write that? It's not true. I don't get that abroad. They treat me like a star. You know? But you know what it is? There are not enough stories being told about Nigerians. So, and there's a lot of passion in Nigeria with regard to literature. And people are wary about what you're telling people overseas. And they're not afraid to take you on, you know? So, and that's basically the culture, the reading culture we have in Nigeria, very aggressive towards writers. Overseas, it's milder and people are welcoming.
What's the most memorable compliment you have received from a Nigerian reader?
You know, people tell me I don't look like my photo, which I'm not sure whether it's a compliment or it's not, you know. Say, you don't look like your photo. And I want to ask them, you know, I'm being facetious. I don't know, I don't really take in the compliments, to be honest with you. I don't really dwell on them because I feel that most people want to be nice to writers, you know, and so they will say, oh, I really enjoyed your book. The funniest thing is when people say, I really enjoyed your book, and you say, which one? And they can't remember the title, or they never even read the book at all, you know. And what I do remember sometimes is the insults, you know. And I had one, this young guy, he came up to me, we're talking about literature, and he said he didn't like a certain book. And I said, well, it wasn't so bad. And he said, well, I could say the same for your book. I didn't really like it either. And I was looking at him and I said, what if I said to him, I don't like your face? Because he then asked me, can we be friends? After saying that to me. And I said, well, if I said to him, I don't like your face, but can we be friends? How would he react to me? So that was an interesting moment. And as I said, people are not shy to tell you they don't like your work. But I don't take in the compliments or the insults. I think it's necessary, or not necessary insults, negative criticism. I think it's necessary to remove yourself from that, you know, because you could get into this whole believing the hype or into a tit for tat, which is even worse. It's unproductive, you know. Say thank you and move on.
People tend to compare you with Chimamanda Adichie. Have you read any of her books?
I've read Purple Hibiscus, Half of Yellow Sun. I have not caught up with The Thing Around Your Neck. And I don't know if there's a latest one. So I tend to, as I said, I tend to read a lot of things at the same time. So I'm still catching up on a lot of things, yeah. And I've been reading dead writers, I have to say. A lot of dead writers. I enjoy them for some reason, you know. I just think they're better, you know. And yeah. I also read Teju Cole's recently, and Chika Onigwe's on Black Sister Street. Actually reviewed that one. Lola Shone's The Secret Lives of Babaseghi's Wives. I'm just trying to think if I have forgotten anyone. All the others, Uema Pans, Helen Habilas, you know, yeah.
Who will enjoy reading A Bit of a Difference?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, it's an odd thing, the people that end up enjoying the book. When it was reviewed in America, it was reviewed by two men, presumably white males. I don't know, I didn't meet them, but from their names I could tell. And they seemed to enjoy the book, you know, from their feedback, which to me was interesting. I think people will react to the story in the way they react in the way that they would react to Deola in real life. Some people might be excited by the story because they think, finally, someone's writing about us. You know, this is our life, and it's rarely represented in literature. some people might feel, oh, she's one of those spoiled rich Nigerians that we can't stand, self-absorbed, the rest of it, you know. And so it depends. I think they will just react to her to her story as they would to her in real life.
Thank you very much, Sefi, for coming. We hope to have you here again.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to be here again.
Welcome back. Have you heard the name Oyinkansola Oyelabi? Well, if you have not, it's my pleasure to introduce to you one of the brightest future literary stars in Nigeria. Oyinkansola is a 10-year-old poet and writer. She has written numerous poems and published a book on poetry. We invited her to come on the channel's book club to read a poem specially for you. Here's Oyinkansola. What inspires you to write?
Nature, people, and the things around me, the things I see around me. The title of my first poem is There Are Times. There are times in one's life when light seems like darkness. You tread upon it, thinking you are in the dark. There are times in one's life when darkness seems like light. You tread upon it, thinking you are in the light. There are times in one's life when light seems like darkness and darkness seems like light. Then you need to think twice because you are at a crossroad, and the decision you take might make or mar your life. The title of my second poem is Act Your Dream. Don't just think it, act it. Don't just dream it, act it. Don't just wish it, act it. Don't just desire it, act it. Don't just aim it, act it. Don't just say it, act it. Whatever it is you want to be is best achieved when you act it. So act fast and be that you wish to be.
Would you like to say something to the other children and other adults out there?
I want to give a word of encouragement to people outside that they should not think of what other people think about them, that they should do what they like and do what they feel is right. And about reading of books, reading is fun and it helps you a lot to know more.
Welcome, Bishop Kukah. Thank you for coming on the channel's book club.
Great pleasure.
Your book is an exciting book. I mean, I've read it, and one thing that kept going through my mind when reading it was, why is nobody talking about this book like we spoke about Chinua Achebe's recent controversial book? Because this book is loaded with things that ordinarily Nigerians will be talking about.
Well, thank you very much for your compliments. I don't know. I mean, I live in Nigeria. I don't live in America, and I'm not Chinua Achebe. But I was quite deliberate, excuse me, in some of the issues that are raised in the book, because for me, writing the book was more or less one way of keeping the issues of Oputa panel alive. But as you know, Nigeria is a rather hostile country to intellectual engagement. I think more and more of our people are involved in making money, and it actually explains perhaps why we're where we are. You know, ideas are pretty not very welcome, and I think the combustible environment does not actually even create the necessary platform for thinking and debate. Perhaps it also explains why people hear about a new book. If you have abused XYZ, they might look at what you have said, and after that, people turn to the next issue.
I mean, let's go straight into the book now. The Oputa Panel Commission. Oh no, Oputa Commission. Some people like to call it Oputa Panel. How important is it in our national history?
It was supposed to be very important, and I think perhaps maybe 50, 100 years from now, I'm a student of history, and luckily for me, I have paid a lot of attention to documentation and the importance of history in how nations grow and how individuals avoid the mistakes of the past. And I'm also very convinced that a substantial reason for why we're where we are is because we took our mind away from history. Countries coming out of dictatorship, civilian or military, or what you might call closed societies, require some kind of catharsis. They require something to help you breathe fresh air, to help you even appreciate the things you've taken for granted. So truth commissions came out of the end of communism. Right through the former Soviet Union, these nations had to come to terms, with the 50 years of people perceiving that their future had been stolen from them. South Africa had to do the same thing. Many countries in Latin America had to do the same thing. In fact, this is where the history of what came to be known as transitional justice came about. Everybody else has had to debate the pros and cons of transitional justice. But I'm sure if you live in Nigeria, you may just be hearing that word for the first time. Because transitional justice essentially created the philosophical basis for transitions. Because if you have been living under a dictatorship, where in this same country, Newswatch magazine, Concord magazine, The Guardian, Punch, a range of other newspapers were banned or went through different stages of, journalists were imprisoned and so on and so forth. So the whole idea behind transitional justice was to look at the past and then try to ask, how did this whole thing happen? What kind of architecture do we design to ensure that the freedom that we have now secured is adequately protected? How do we ensure that this kind of thing does not happen again? And the only way you can do that is you have to create theater. It's largely theatrical, it's also largely dramatic. And those issues are contested and in a very good way. The very fact that Oputa Panel was something that the media caught on only very late. But then when it did catch on, people began to see it live. You require that kind of drama. But there are also other things. Judicial processes, people being put into prison if it was necessary, and so on and so forth. So generally, people could then breathe a sigh of relief and say, okay, now we know this is what has happened. And that a general in the army will learn and that, how to respect the rights of people. And that police officers, security officers will learn how not to treat, citizens with levity. A lot of these things also, you now have to roll out a basket of activities and other developments in the polity, including eliminating almost people or individuals whose presence had tainted the system. Now, the Nigerian situation has not been helped by the fact that people just strategically changed their jerseys, very little change in the system. So frankly, if you ask why is it that after 50 years of democracy, we haven't covered enough distance, most of it is tied to what I consider to be the job that we didn't attend to, namely the philosophical basis for transitional justice.
You wrote, and most Nigerians know, that the report of the commission was never officially released. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that, again, my conclusion, I wasn't terribly disappointed. Let me put it that way, because with hindsight, I realized that truth commissions have basically the same logic. I visited Asia, I participated at international conferences in different parts of the world where I was invited to speak about the Truth Commission in Nigeria. And like I often say to very many people, I've gone around many parts of the world to talk because white people, let me put it that way, have been anxious to hear about what happened in Nigeria. But not one single Nigerian university ever said to me, or to even Justice Oputa, what really happened at Oputa panel, including the political science departments. So that the report was not released. Nigerians like to dramatize the fact that the report was not released as a tragedy. But even if the report had been released, this is Nigeria. Nobody will read it.
My name is Martin Udoge. I'm the host of Business Hour. I'm also publisher of Bottom Line Newsletter. I'm an ex-banker and consultant. I read a lot. I read about 3 to 4 books every month. And what I found about reading is that it has helped me. It has helped me to, boost my confidence. I found out that if you know something other people do not know, they will listen to you. And the way to do that is to read. And when you read, you are more confident, you can speak better, you can speak with confidence, you can interact with people, you have authority. So I'd like to advise you that, just pick up a book. My first book, the one that really changed my reading culture, or my reading habit rather, was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Since I read that book, I have never stopped reading. I pray you also find a book that will make you not stop reading.
I hope you have enjoyed this show. Please join us next week at the same time for another episode. Meanwhile, we'll be happy to receive you on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to read a great book. Bye-bye.